So good morning. Before we get started this morning, I thought I would have Sarah come to the podium and give kind of an update and overview about how we're addressing processing and manufacturing facilities in the state of Iowa. Sarah?
Thank you, Gov Reynolds, and good morning. I appreciate the opportunity today to address the topic of business outbreaks that we've been discussing the last 2 days. Right now, the Iowa Department of Public Health becomes aware of outbreaks at businesses when the employers tell us or when the state facilitates testing at a particular facility. Businesses are not currently required to report outbreaks to the Department of Public Health. Additionally, Iowa law allows confirmation of outbreaks only when necessary to protect the health of the public. We've determined confirming outbreaks at businesses is only necessary when the employment setting constitutes a high-risk environment for the potential of COVID-19 transmission. Because employers are accessing testing from a variety of sources and not relying solely on the state, our department isn't aware of all of the testing that is occurring. In addition, case investigation and contact tracing is conducted in part by local public health and in part by the Iowa Department of Public Health. Part of the case investigation and contact tracing interview asks people where they work and who has been a close contact at work. The Iowa Department of Public Health does not routinely collect and store information about the number of employees at different businesses, so we haven't had ready access to all of the information necessary to confirm outbreaks at the point in time when 10% of employees working in these high-risk environments might test positive. We are working on these processes so we can continue to provide information to the public that is necessary for Iowans to protect themselves. While I know there is a high level of interest in IDPH announcing outbreaks at businesses, the most important thing for Iowans to know is how to take care of yourself and your health. This includes taking actions when you're around others, including staying at least 6 feet away, wearing a mask or other cloth face covering when social distancing is not possible, washing and sanitizing your hands frequently, covering your coughs and sneezes, and staying home when you're sick. In addition, if you are contacted on behalf of public health, please pick up the phone. You will be contacted if you are identified during a case investigation as a close contact with a confirmed case, and you will be provided with instructions about what you need to do to monitor your health and how to get tested if necessary. Unfortunately, we have heard of scams happening in other states related to contact tracing. Please know that public health or someone acting on behalf of public health will never ask you for your social security number or any other financial information. Today, we have confirmed an outbreak at the Tyson pork processing plant in Storm Lake, where 555 of the 2,517 employees tested have had a positive result reported so far. As always, our department will continue to provide Iowans with information about actions you can take to stay healthy and informed. And with that, I'll turn it back to you, Governor.
Thank you, Sarah. Again, I appreciate the work done by the Department of Public Health to keep Iowans informed throughout this pandemic. You know, COVID-19 has had an impact on every Iowan in one way or another, and farmers and producers are no exception. As the virus hit our country, it was critical that Iowa keep our economy moving, not only for our people, but for the world. Over 10% of our nation's food supply is produced by Iowa farmers. We're the #1 producer of corn, soybeans, biofuels, eggs, and pork. In fact, 1/3 of the nation's pork is produced right here in Iowa, approximately 44 million pigs a year. 1/4 of the nation's pork processing done right here in Iowa, approximately 150,000 pigs a day. Our farmers, truckers, grocery store workers, manufacturers, and processors were essential in keeping the food supply chain moving and food on our tables. Since the outbreak of the coronavirus, I've kept the lines of communication open between our producers, our truckers, grocers, and processors with my office. We kept Iowa open for business, delivered the food and other goods Americans needed during this pandemic. It's why I made surveillance testing and our food supply chain a priority. Over the past couple of months, we've been in touch with nearly 50 different manufacturers and processing facilities to offer and coordinate testing. We've provided both PCR diagnostic as well as serology testing for their employees. To date, we have completed diagnostic testing for more than 13,400 employees and serology testing for nearly 7,000, and even more than those numbers have gone through our Test Iowa sites. By working with our manufacturers and processors to provide surveillance testing, we're able to quickly identify and isolate positive cases, get our workers on a path to recovery, conduct case investigation to determine the scope of the virus, and with proper PPE and CDC guidance in place, give employees the assurance of a safe workplace and employers the information needed in decision making. Iowa led the nation in taking aggressive and proactive measures to protect our state's critical infrastructure and essential workforce. We understood the potential impact to our nation's food supply, our state's economy, and our farmers. Still, short-term closures and reduced production capacity occurred and has had a significant impact on our producers. Due to COVID-19, Iowa's agriculture industry could experience a multi-billion-dollar impact, according to Iowa State University economists. Our pork industry alone could lose more than $2 billion, beef more than $700 million, corn nearly $800 million, and soybeans more than $200 million. Due to COVID-19, U.S. pork production has lost approximately 25% of its processing capacity, and this lost processing capacity will create a backup of approximately 600,000 pigs in Iowa that should otherwise go to market. This is devastating for Iowa farmers and producers, and it will be felt at all levels. Consumers are already seeing it at the grocery stores with higher prices of meats and limits of how much they can buy, which disproportionately affects lower-income Iowans. I've personally had the opportunity to speak with Vice President Pence and USDA Secretary Perdue, and have urged them for immediate support for our farmers and producers. Last week, the USDA announced additional details for relief to our producers through the CARES Act. The USDA COVID-19 Food Assistance Program, or CFAP, provides up to $16 billion in direct payments to American farmers impacted by the pandemic. It provides financial assistance to producers who have suffered a 5% or greater price decline due to COVID-19 and face additional cost as a result of lower demand, surplus production, and disruptions. Producers will receive payments drawn from two funding sources. The first, $9.5 billion from the CARES Act, compensates farmers for losses due to price declines that has occurred between January 15th and April 15th, and provides support for specialty crops. Additionally, $6.5 billion from the Commodity Credit Corporation Charter Act will compensate producers for losses due to ongoing market disruptions. Producers of all eligible commodities will be able to apply through their local FSA office, and applications are being accepted through August 28th. At the state level, we're also working to support Iowa's farmers and producers during this challenging time. They're the foundation of our economy, and when they're hurting, we're all hurting. And while we can't make the situation any less challenging, we can do our part to help. Through the state allocation for the CARES Act, I've appropriated $24 million in funding through the Disposable Assistance Program through IDOLS. And today, I've asked Secretary Mike Naig to join me and share information about the program that was announced earlier this week.
Well, thank you, Governor, and I appreciate the opportunity to be here with you today. Our farmers and our ag businesses and really everyone throughout the supply chain are managing through an unprecedented disruption to the marketplace. And today we're announcing a plan to specifically help our Iowa pork producers who are facing some very difficult decisions due to that processing disruption. But beyond pork, we know that this situation has impacted every part of Iowa agriculture, and every farmer has been impacted in some way. And of course, we know that agriculture is not just about farmers. It's not just an economic imperative to the state of Iowa. It's also important to each of us as consumers and when it comes to the availability of food for our families. For more than 10 weeks now, our lives have been turned upside down from COVID-19, and one of the side effects has been that massive disruption in the food supply chain. As the number of COVID-19 cases at large meat packing facilities has increased, we've seen some of those facilities have to shut down, and nearly all of them have significantly reduced their processing capacity to accommodate for workers who tested positive and need to stay home and get the care that they need, and allow for distancing between workers in the plants. This has resulted in farmers struggling to find harvest capacity for their animals for meat. The low point for processing capacity here in Iowa occurred the first week of May, and by then we were running about 50,000 pigs short per day. By mid-May, an Iowa State University report estimated that approximately 600,000 pigs were backed up on Iowa farms that under normal circumstances would have already been harvested. And this challenge will only continue to build until processing capacity is back to full strength. And processing capacity improves each week, each day, and as of today, we're sitting at about 80% in the state. Producers are exploring every opportunity to alleviate this backlog of animals, including changing the feed ration to slow down the rate of gain, finding new markets, selling directly to consumers, even making donations through our Pass the Pork program, donating animals to food banks and food pantries to help food insecure Iowans. However, that backlog is larger than those solutions can address, and so producers are already having to and will continue to have to look at the very difficult and emotional decision to euthanize their animals to prevent animal welfare issues. Euthanasia is always the last resort. I'll repeat that. Euthanasia is always the last resort. A pork producer's goal is to raise healthy animals to feed others. It's what they do. So euthanasia goes against everything that they do every day and everything that they stand for, and it creates a tremendous amount of emotional stress for those producers. When euthanasia is the only option, though, producers consult with their herd veterinarians. They develop plans to humanely euthanize animals following American Veterinary Medicine Association guidelines and dispose of those carcasses in an environmentally safe way. So starting this week, the Iowa Department of Agriculture launched the Disposal Assistance Program to provide financial resources to pork producers to properly dispose of animals. Producers must provide a confirmation from their veterinarian of an impending welfare issue if action isn't taken, and provide proof of proper disposal to receive funding. And that disposal assistance will be made available to producers through at least 3 rounds of funding throughout the next several weeks. The application for the first round is open now, and it will close tomorrow. We are also developing criteria to allow producers that have already euthanized animals from May 1st to today to also apply for assistance through this program. We will release more information on that in the coming days. To apply for the Disposal Assistance Program, producers should visit iowaagriculture.gov/IDAP or call the office 515-281-5321. And you know these are very, very, very challenging times in agriculture, but we're no strangers to adversity, and we know that brighter days are ahead. So thank you, Governor, for your tremendous leadership during this crisis and for supporting the agriculture community at a time when they need it most through efforts like this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. I appreciate the opportunity to work together with you, and I truly appreciate your leadership. Secretary Naig set up an incident response team, I think, at the very beginning, and has spent hours and hours talking to our farmers and producers all across the state, understanding the scope of the impact of COVID-19 and what it meant to them. And I just really do appreciate your leadership. I appreciate you bringing these ideas and being able to help you really implement this program to help offset some of the damages that they're experiencing from COVID-19. Our state is truly blessed with our rich agricultural history and our hardworking farmers and producers who not only produce the livestock and grain necessary to feed and fuel the nation and the world, they also generously feed those in need when times require it. COVID-19 has been one of those times when we've seen food insecurity skyrocket. More Iowans than ever have required food assistance, and Iowa farmers have stepped up to help through programs like Pass the Pork. Today, I am pleased to announce that I have also allocated additional funding through the CARES state funding to sustain and grow this program, the Pass the Pork, and provide additional relief to our food banks who are working so hard to meet the needs of Iowans experiencing food insecurity during these unprecedented times. I've asked the Lieutenant Governor Greg to join me and to provide an update on the progress that's been made by the Feeding Iowa Task Force and the programs that will receive additional funding. Adam, thanks for joining us from the Capitol today.
Good morning. Thank you, Governor, and thank you for prioritizing food insecurity during this pandemic. And thank you for providing significant funding to back that up with the over $3.5 million of funding that we're able to announce here today. The Feeding Iowans Task Force has been looking at creative ways to deal with supply chain disruptions and other market impacts during the COVID-19 pandemic, which you've heard about in detail today. Specifically, we've been looking at ways to create our own mini supply chains. We're very blessed to have agriculture, livestock production, and food processing as key components of our state's economy. And we've been working on ways to leverage that fact to ensure that hungry Iowans have access to food. The funding Governor Reynolds is dedicating today allows us to do that in multiple ways. We've talked a few times today already about the Pass the Pork program, where pigs are donated and processed at local locker facilities, and the meat is donated to Iowa food banks. Today, Governor Reynolds is dedicating $500,000 to the Department of Agriculture to scale and expand that concept, not only for pork, but also to include beef as well, in partnership with Iowa's beef producers and the meat lab in the Animal Science Department at Iowa State University. We're also working on solutions to support donations from turkey, egg, and dairy producers. Along similar lines of creating our own supply chains, we've been hearing from food bank purchasing directors that they're struggling to procure some of their typical shelf-stable products like rice, oatmeal, and pasta through their normal distribution channels. So we're creating our own. Governor Reynolds is dedicating $1 million toward the bulk purchase of these types of products. We will then partner with AmeriCorps workers from across the country who are trained at the NCCC campus in Vinton, Iowa, to repackage the products into consumer-sized packaging. That allows us to purchase the products at bulk prices in large quantities outside the normal consumer supply chains and hedge against further disruptions. Governor Reynolds is also providing an additional $60,000 to support the ongoing AmeriCorps efforts through Volunteer Iowa. The governor is also providing $1 million in grants to Iowa's food banks to assist with the increased costs and challenges they're facing with food acquisition during this time, and also to cover increased supply costs. For example, the shift to pre-boxing the food has created significant additional costs along with increased sanitation efforts during the pandemic. Finally, the governor is also dedicating $1 million to the Double Up Food Bucks program. Run by the Healthy Estate Initiative, this program provides a one-to-one match of SNAP dollars to be used to purchase fresh fruits and vegetables at participating farmers markets and grocery stores. We feel this is a particularly good investment because it both helps Iowans in need and also helps our specialty crop farmers who tend to sell at farmers markets and who have experienced disruptions in their businesses as well. Governor, thank you again for dedicating such significant resources, over $3.5 million, to the efforts of the Feeding Iowans Task Force. And thank you to the members of the task force who have worked so diligently to take on this challenge over the past few months. Along with the significant philanthropy and the generosity of Iowans, these funds will definitely amplify our efforts to address food insecurity during the pandemic. So with that, thank you, Governor, again, and I'll turn it back to you.
Oh, thank you, Adam. And I want to thank you for your leadership on the committee and really to all the members, too, on the task force who have worked tirelessly to help Iowans that are dealing with food insecurity during these difficult times. Your leadership and the team, it is making a difference for so many Iowa families across the state of Iowa. So thank you again for your leadership. I appreciate it. You know, I also want to thank our Iowa National Guard for their missions to support our food banks. In May alone, the National Guard delivered 25 mobile distributions to rural communities, equaling nearly 103,000 pounds, and that's 400,000 meals that would have not otherwise been provided. I also want to recognize, so it was a great, heartfelt thanks to our soldiers who are really helping us tremendously through the COVID-19 pandemic. I also want to recognize the generosity of Iowa companies who have made supporting food banks across Iowa are a state priority at this time. Delta Dental and Delta Vision is offering its members 25% premium relief credit for April and May premiums and giving them an option to make those dollars go even further. Members can choose to donate to premium relief credit to their premium relief credit, to the Iowa Food Bank Association, which serves food banks in all 99 counties, and Delta Dental will match members' donations up to $250,000. A number of others are stepping up to help as well. Dahl Distributing loaned a full-time driver to the Food Bank of Iowa to assist with distribution. Atlantic Bottling and the Coca-Cola Foundation has provided $35,000 to each to the Riverbend Food Bank in Davenport and Northeast Iowa Food Bank in Waterloo. Farmers Mutual Hale is providing $100,000 in donations to the Food Bank of Iowa, and Wellmark Foundation made a $100,000 donation to the Food Bank of Iowa as well. So just heartfelt thanks to all of the companies and individuals who are helping Iowans in need at this time. And with that, we will open it up for questions.
So, Governor, the situation at Storm Lake appears to be, I don't know if you could call it out of control, but it's certainly a huge spike in cases there.
Yeah.
And from what Sarah was telling us this morning, if you're not notified early enough to get ahead of it, I mean, the whole testing regime you've outlined for us is to get ahead of it, mitigate it, try to stop it.
Yeah.
But it doesn't appear that that's worked here. I mean,
It's
a situation that's almost
well,
out of
this is
control.
what's taken place all across the state, and it's because we have the ability to test, to actually proactively see where the virus activity is at, get into the facility and work with the facility and the employees to do significant testing of all of the employees. That helps us identify the scope of the virus activity. It helps us identify who's positive and negative, which is crucial, as we've talked about with Secretary Nag addressed and what I have addressed multiple times about the importance of keeping the food supply chain moving and also making sure that we're doing everything we can to protect our essential workforce. So by testing, we can identify the positive, we can individuals who have tested positive, we can isolate them, get them on the road to recovery, make sure that the employers are separating the shifts so we don't have positive testing individuals working with negative testing individuals, even though it sometimes means reduced capacity at the facilities. Many times, even though they have to sometimes shut down for a short period of time, many times they're able to continue operating just at reduced capacity. So we are, and so again, when you test more individuals, when we go into a hotspot, we're going to see positive outcomes. And that's part of how we address, manage, and contain. And then the balance of that, as Sarah talked about, a really significant piece of that is the case investigation that we do, so we can, again, start to understand the scope, make sure they're aware that they've been exposed and take the proper actions to protect themselves.
Governor, I was wondering, at the end of June, it's possible that Title 32 could end and the Iowa Guardsmen will be recalled. I was wondering if you're going to use the CARES Act money to replace all 150 guardsmen that are doing
I think I talked about this yesterday at the press conference. But so I've already sent a letter and requested that Title 32 be extended through the end of July. I have joined all other governors across the state through the National Governors Association, and also sending a letter to the administration asking them to extend it through July because of the important work that they're doing and helping us address COVID-19. But we have to plan for, the scenario that doesn't happen. And so the Department of Public Health received funding, additional $100 million, I believe, for testing, and case investigation is a big piece of that. So they're walking through the numbers right now, taking a look at what that looks like, and if we lost the guard support, what would be the cost to hire and bring on additional help to allow us to continue to do a really important component of that, and that's case investigation. So they're running through those scenarios right now, so we'll be prepared either way. We're hoping that we'll get to continue to keep the Guard as an asset in helping us deal with COVID-19, but in the case that doesn't happen, we'll have a backup plan and we'll be ready to go. Through the Test Iowa program, we also ask a lot of the questions on the front end, so that's really enhanced the process that we're doing with the case case investigation. So that's also streamlined that as well and allowed us to really be more efficient with that process too. Did you have another question? Did you have a follow-up or another question? Yeah.
No, I'm fine.
Okay.
I will in a moment.
Oh, okay.
If the law or policy does not require businesses to report an outbreak, how can you explain to people how does that best protect Iowans' health? And then secondarily, following up from yesterday, if you're saying that you're not going to confirm an outbreak unless asked, then
Well,
can we ask now if there are
yeah.
any additional outbreaks?
I think she indicated one in Sarah's comment. She said that there was one additional today. And so, Dave, I did say the media will hold me accountable and ask, but I also said in response to Kay's question yesterday, for heaven's sakes, throughout this entire short 2.5 months, we have enhanced our process. We learn as we go. We just have to make sure that we're, balancing the privacy of individuals with the public health impact. And so I said yesterday, we would continue to review our processes and see what makes the most sense and how we can consistently report out information. Do you want to reiterate some of the things that you said? I mean, I think that's what Sarah was trying to say, some of the things they take into consideration. She did. What was it? Tyson?
Just Tyson.
Tyson.
But that's what you were asked about yesterday. Are there any additional ones that we should
No.
ask you about?
No. Thanks for holding me accountable. No.
Secretary Naig, if I may ask you a couple of questions about the euthanization. So with the plants getting back online, do you expect this to continue for a while? I mean, I think you had mentioned a number of a few 100,000 hogs that are kind of backed up. How much longer do we expect that to be necessary? And if I may ask you kind of a delicate question, I guess today there's going to be a video released by an animal rights group that shows how these hogs are being euthanized by shutting off their systems, and basically they just suffocate. It's probably not going to be a pretty thing for people to see. I guess, how do you respond to that kind of?
Well, first of all, on the backup, the backlog piece of this, this is something that, again, it's been building for several weeks. And so even if you get to a place where packing plants are running at full capacity, we still have that backlog, and it'll require plants to potentially run on Saturdays, get above their normal processing capacity in order to catch up. And so, again, this changes day by day. The good news is that really starting at that low point at the beginning of May, we've seen a steady increase in that processing capacity. But it will take some, I would expect that the producers will be dealing with this really throughout the summer months. Now, we're targeting these dollars to really last through the month of June because we want producers to have time to make the decisions. We don't want to force anybody to make a decision too soon, right? We want to make sure that they know that dollars will be available in the future weeks, and so that truly this is the last resort, right? No producer wants to be in this situation. So on the second question, let me be really clear. No producer wants to be faced with this decision. This is absolutely against everything that they stand for and do on a day-to-day basis. They care for animals. They produce animals. They raise animals. They raise animals for food production. And to have to be forced, and truly be forced into this kind of decision and this kind of action is something that no producer wants to do. So as it relates to some of the activist activity in the state, I think it's disgusting. I think that our producers are experiencing an unprecedented disruption in their business and their way of life, and we've got folks with a clear agenda that are kicking our farmers while they're down. The facts are that producers work with their veterinarians. Veterinarians follow the American Vet Med Association's guidelines for euthanasia, humane euthanasia, even in constrained situations like we're in today. So that's the guidelines. Those are the best practices that producers will use. No producer wants to be in this situation.
The payment program pays the producer per hog. Is that the way it works? The
Right.
mechanism is per hog that has to be euthanized.
That's right.
They get a payment for that to, I guess, help compensate for their losses and.
To help cover the cost of disposal alone. And there's this program does not compensate farmers for the loss of the market of the value of that animal. And the governor talked about CFAP, the USDA program. That's one piece. We still think that there's indemnity that should be paid to producers to compensate for the loss of that animal. And this would apply to our egg producers and cattlemen as well, but certainly as it relates to pork. So one piece of this, though, is that disposal cost, and that's what we're focused on.
Thank you.
And this isn't unique to Iowa. Every state that ag is the foundation of their economy. Minnesota is dealing with it. South Dakota is dealing with it. Nebraska is dealing with it. Colorado is dealing with it. Texas will be dealing with it. We've talked about the impact of reducing the capacity of these processing plants and what it has. And that's why it's been so important that we work to make sure that we're doing everything we can to keep the capacity up, to get it back to normal, and most importantly, protect the workforce that is standing on the front line to make sure that Iowans and families have food on the table. It's important.
Thank you, Governor. President Trump recently tweeted that schools in our country should be opened ASAP. Do you agree with his position, and does this change Iowa's directive to schools that are formulating their 2021 school year plans for August, or is the expectation now that schools should find a way to operate with in-class attendance, or is ASAP kind of in the eye of the beholder?
Well, they're way ahead of that, actually, and maybe not this declaration, but the PROC before that, working with the Department of Education, we opened up, well, effective June 1st, I think, summer learning and school activities limited to high school, and that was, I think, softball and baseball. But we have opened up and allowed activities to start happening through summer learning at our school districts across the state. And they've also, through the task force and with the Department of Ed and with school districts all across the state, they've put together a return to learn plan that really has three approaches. There's a hybrid approach. There's a section that deals with if we have to shut down the school for a couple of days, how can you provide continuous learning from home? It will be mandatory and they will be required to participate. And then what do they need to do to bring, to open the schools back up for fall? So they're preparing, they're ready, schools are engaged. Director Lebo has done a great job really reaching out to school districts and school boards and teachers to really prepare and be ready for whatever happens.
Caroline, go ahead.
Good morning, Governor. Sarah, you said that businesses are not required to report outbreaks, but there was guidance on outbreaks for businesses from the department on April 8th asking that they please report to the department when 10% or more are showing COVID-19 symptoms. So two-parter here. First, what changed and when in terms of that guidance asking for them to report? And secondly, why aren't businesses required to let the state public health officials know about widespread infection of a potentially deadly disease?
Thank you, Caroline, for your question. I think that I'll try to remember all of it. The guidance for businesses really talked about how to prevent as well as detect outbreaks within a particular business. The request for businesses to report to us when they had at least 10% absenteeism was out of an effort for the Department of Public Health to provide support and guidance to those businesses. And that offer still stands today. We stand ready when anybody reaches out to provide support and guidance about how to prevent and detect outbreaks, and then what to do if an outbreak actually occurs within your particular facility. We didn't have a lot of businesses reporting that statistic in terms of the absenteeism. And so we decided to take the survey down and instead just continue to invite businesses to work with us. We also know the businesses are working with local public health agencies throughout our state to receive that support and guidance that they need. And related to Iowa state law related to infectious disease outbreaks, we've had it on the books for a long time. Whenever we have cases of E. coli or salmonella, for example, that can be equally as infectious, we carefully balance the need to identify a particular business with the need to the threat to the public's health. And so we're applying that same statutory framework here related to the COVID-19 outbreak. And as I said earlier, that case investigation and contact tracing process, that's part of our routine infectious disease case investigation process. It's something that we have done in public health for years, and we're continuing to do that with COVID-19. And if we feel like it's necessary to notify the public, we will continue to do that. And as I said earlier, if you're contacted by a public health official, please pick up the phone. They're calling you for a reason. And please also remember the steps you need to take to keep yourself healthy, which I went through earlier. But they are maintain good social distancing when you're out and about, wash your hands frequently, stay home when you're sick, and consider wearing a mask or a cloth face covering if social distancing is not possible. Thank you.
And I think as somebody reminded me earlier this morning, we are still in substantial spread throughout the state of Iowa. We have been since March 8th. We are going to have to learn to live with and manage COVID-19 until or if a vaccine is discovered. And so, every individual needs to take into account the measures that Sarah just went through. And again, another example of being proactive, I think, was Wright County and the measures that they've taken to really reach out to the facilities and to get in front of it and to be proactive with the testing. So Sandy, I got just drawing a blank on her name, McGrath from Wright County, who we had at the press conference yesterday, walked through all of the things that they're doing. Our team, Jake, has reached out to 50 plus manufacturers and processors and does that throughout the week to just check in and see how it's going and if they need testing or they can help in any way. Joel on our team is holding webinars almost on a weekly basis. We're reaching out to restaurant owners, to bar owners, to businesses, to Chamber of Commerce's to make sure that they have the information that they need to move through this in a safe and responsible manner. So every day there is a ton of outreach that is taking place so that we can be proactive in helping Iowans address COVID-19.
All right, we're going to go with 2 more questions. Chris, KCCI.
Sarah, how does requiring or not requiring businesses to report outbreaks, how does that not hinder the ability of the DPH to stay ahead on infections?
Well, Chris, as I've mentioned, every time we do have a mandatory order in place that requires providers to notify us anytime there is a positive COVID-19 case. That positive case triggers case investigation, at which point in time we will contact the individual, we will find out where they work, we will find out who their close contacts are. The Department of Public Health and local public health agencies have provided more information to employers and to the public through this COVID-19 pandemic than we've ever provided before, because it is a sensitive balance between protecting patient identity and protecting the health of the public. And so we work every day to strike that balance and to do it in the right way, and we will continue to do that.
Last question to Wayne.
Yeah, I was just curious, what went into establishing the 10% as the stipulation to report, and why is that kind of the magic number for this instance?
Sure. So 10% during flu season, during influenza season, we ask schools to report to us when they have 10% absenteeism in their schools, and that helps us understand what the influenza activity levels are like in our state. And so 10% is a standard that we've used for other infectious diseases. And so that's the decision that was made when we entered into COVID. Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Have a great day.